Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Welcome to Talkin Movies with Sam and Raj. I'm one of your co-hosts, Raj, and with me is.
Sam.
And thanks for joining us. This is episode one of a new movie podcast that we're starting, and we're going to kind of run through some of the news that we see throughout the week. We'll dive into some reviews of new releases, and we'll also start talking about the Oscar race picking up into February. So let's go ahead and get started with the news, Sam. The first story that I wanted to touch on this week was one of the biggest stories that we saw this past month, honestly, is Andy Serkis and Colin Farrell were both announced to have joined the cast of the upcoming The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves.
Right.
Andy Serkis was said to have been cast as Alfred, and Colin Farrell was said to have been cast as the Penguin. They're joining Robert Pattinson, who's playing the Batman, Zoe Kravitz, who's Catwoman, Paul Dano is playing the Riddler, and Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon. What do you think of this new news addition to
I
the
mean,
cast?
it feels like it just hit us all at once. It's like day after day we were getting hit with like Disney news, and all of a sudden we get like this news about Andy Serkis and Colin Farrell joining the Batman. It's just stacked as hell.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
if you're not working on Dune, you're working on the Batman movie.
that's so true. That's so true. I think this is incredible. I'm excited to see what Matt Reeves does. Obviously, he has that past relationship with Andy Serkis, having worked with him on the Planet of the Apes movies.
Hmm.
And I think I'm really interested to see what Colin Farrell is going to do as the Penguin. I don't think that's sort of like traditional casting. I know a lot of people were saying when the news was announced that they thought Farrell actually might have made like a better Harvey Dent. But I actually think this is pretty inspired casting, and especially seeing Serkis also come in as Alfred. We've only seen Alfred played by, older English actors, and Andy Serkis is old, but not nearly as old as somebody like Michael Caine or even Jeremy Irons. I
Right,
think
right.
that's really interesting, and that speaks to Reeves's vision of scaling down, like making Batman himself younger. Pattinson's a young guy,
Yeah.
and I'm interested to see what Serkis does with the role as well.
Did you hear about Two-Face? Since you mentioned Two-Face, did you hear about Two-Face in the movie?
No, I did not actually.
They're thinking about in talks with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, that would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be pretty good. It's like just
That,
everybody that like, any A-lister you think of that could be in the movie is in the movie.
honestly, yeah, this. I
They
mean, just
haven't they haven't confirmed it, but I mean, like that'd be great.
yeah, that would be great. I do draw a little bit of concern if we continue to get like even more casting. Is this movie going to be overloaded? I believe this was announced to be a trilogy.
Hmm.
Matt Reeves had kind of written a trilogy out, so that might make me a little bit more comfortable with this. If we're seeing like Two Face show up at the end, and maybe one of these other villains show up at the end of the movie, leading into the second part of this three story arc. But
Right.
so far, I'm pretty happy with what we've gotten. I don't think a lot of people were expecting all these actors to be cast in these roles, but now that they've actually been cast in these roles, I think most people seem to be very satisfied with what we're getting.
Are you thinking that they're just casting ahead of the trilogy? Like they're just saying this is going to be like the villain for movie two and then movie three, or just they're going to put all of these villains into one movie?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're casting like ahead of time, and like not that we wouldn't see any of these guys in part one,
Hmm.
but like they'll appear in a certain part of part one, and then they'll actually roles will grow in part two and part three. Again, I think like having two villains here between Paul Dano and Colin Farrell as Riddler and Penguin respectively, like I think that's pretty manageable. I guess that also depends on how you play like Zoe Kravitz. Is she going to be more of a villain as Catwoman, or is she going to be more of like an anti-hero? I think that'll be interesting to see. If they throw in like Harvey Dent as another like main character in this, I
Right.
want to see him just be Harvey Dent in movie one and then become Two Face like towards the end of movie one into movie two.
Hmm.
Um, that's how I see it. Like I think if you have like sort of three villains, we've seen superhero movies go off the rails with like too many villains, like Amazing Spider-Man 2, and even some people thought like Dark Knight Rises was a little overloaded.
Right.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I love what we've seen so far.
They're saying that it was reported back in September that the first movie was going to be based on the Long Halloween comic.
And that
Like a,
that comic, have you read it?
I have not read it. I've read about the synopsis and like who's involved, but I haven't read it myself.
It's an incredible story, and there are quite a few villains in that story as well. Like Harvey Dent is one of the main characters in that story. So if that is inspiring what Matt Reeves is doing, I think I'm okay with it.
Hmm.
But I just don't want him to overload this. But I'm pretty satisfied with what we have so far.
I mean, even with Matt Reeves, we're getting a good movie. I
Yeah,
mean, we can't really say we saw like the eight movies and like what he did with Circus and all that, and I think it's in good hands. I mean, we can't really worry about it.
hmm No, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
So the next sort of big story that drew quite a bit of controversy this week was
Yeah.
that we heard that James Dean, who was the star of Rebel Without a Cause, a big sort of up and coming actor in the early 50s, who actually passed away. He was in a car crash in 1955. He was only 24 years old. And we found out this week that he's actually going to be resurrected via CGI for a Vietnam War drama called Finding Jack. The reports that came from Hollywood Reporter said that they're going to be using full body CGI, using like old pictures and old videos, kind of like what they did with Will Smith in Gemini Man, where that was not an aged down Will Smith, that was like a full CGI character.
Right.
So that's what we're going to be seeing with. That's what the reports are saying that we're going to be seeing with James Dean in this upcoming movie. But I obviously just mentioned that there was a lot of backlash. People were not happy with this. Because they think it's a cash grab. They think it's not right to resurrect an old actor and take away that role from somebody else. My kind of thinking on this is that they got the blessing from his family. It's not really anybody else's place to say whether or not this is right or wrong.
Yeah, I was about to say, what did the estate say? I was going to say, if they say it's okay, I mean, the state
would have had to have given approval for his likeness to be used like straight off the bat. And there was a report actually, I believe yesterday, that came out that the director said they did have his blessing. And I'm actually looking at the original report right now, and that also says that from Hollywood Reporter, and it says that the filmmaker said that they did get approval from his family. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's an interesting experiment more than anything, not to say that it's going to be like a norm going forward, but I do want to see what they do with it. You didn't see Gemini Man, right?
I have not, no.
Okay, so I think the CGI, it wasn't 100% there, and that's expected. There are parts where it looked really good, and there are parts where it looked really bad.
Right.
So this does have me interested, but what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's a good idea just to get younger viewers desensitized to like movies from the 50s, because you mentioned Rebel Without a Cause, but he also had Giant and East of Eden, and he was also working on a couple of TV shows during around the time of his death. So I'm thinking, as long as it is a good idea, like it advances the technology of what like Ang Lee was doing during Gemini Man, but I mean, if the story's there, if the technology is there, and they're treating it with respect, and they have the blessing of the state, I say go with it. I don't think there's a very huge issue with this at all.
Have you seen any of James Dean's performances?
I have not, no. But maybe if people see like how he acted back in the day, we'll get our next Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah, that was part of the backlash. Is Greg Sestero was tweeting like, "This is tearing me apart," and obviously like Chris Evans was out there like tearing this apart, and this is just like. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's interesting. And if the estate is given their blessing, I don't think it's anybody else's place to say this is right or wrong. I think it's their place first. And if they're okay with it, everybody else should just kind of shut up.
I was thinking like, how like Tupac was in Coachella those a few years ago. I was thinking that's what came to mind when I saw this headline. Yeah.
And it's not like they haven't experimented with things like this before. In Rogue One, we saw that they brought Tarkin and Leia via CGI, and it wasn't 100% there either, but I thought it looked solid. There were parts that were very jarring, but and not quite as good as some scenes in Gemini Man. But,
it felt very, very high-end video game.
It did. And, I don't have so much of a problem with that because, like, if it services the story in the right way, like, there's CG in so many movies. And, like, obviously not everything that you're going to see in these movies is going to look real. We just saw, and we're going to talk about later in this episode, Doctor Sleep. And that movie is pretty heavy on CG. There's a lot of practical effects as well, but that movie's pretty heavy on CG. And, not all of it looks great, but, it serviced the story the way that Mike Flanagan meant for it to service the story, and it worked. It didn't distract me in any way.
Yeah, I think they're just jumping the gun, honestly. They're just reacting to react. Sure. I think just wait to see how it looks. If it looks good, let's watch it. If it doesn't look good, we'll give valid criticism about it.
I agree. So let's jump into now what was probably my favorite news story of the week.
Yes, me too. Yes, let's go.
John Boyega, post Star Wars, looks like his first major project post Star Wars is going to be teaming up with Green Room director Jeremy Saulnier for a movie called Rebel Ridge, which is said to be a thriller that's going to be exploring systematic injustices. It's going to be on Netflix, which Saulnier obviously has a relationship with Netflix. His last movie, Hold the Dark, was on Netflix, and I think we don't know a lot about this, but I love this pairing. I want to see John Boyega do some like really dark dark, twisted stuff with Sonia directing him. I think
That'd be very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I'm just thinking, if you've seen Green Room, you've seen Blue Ruin, you know how exciting this can be. You know how Jeremy can direct these really gruesome and visceral scenes.
Yeah.
But if you've only seen Hold the Dark and the first 2 episodes of True Detective season 3, you're not really like looking forward to this.
Sure.
If that's like if that's your only into this movie, I'm just saying I'm recommending watch Green Room and Blue Ruin.
Yeah. That's
Like in True Detective season 3, there was a sequence mid-season or late to the season. There was like a great sequence where Jeremy could have really put his directing abilities in. You know what I'm talking about? Where they're like the shooting scene. Like right. So I'm just thinking,
he actually had like sort of a primer for that scene in Hold the Dark. There's that massive shootout, which I think is the best part of Hold the Dark.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see what John Boyega does here because in Detroit he was good. He was very good in that movie. I don't think that movie landed as well as it should have. I think it's a well-made movie, but I don't think it was particularly enjoyable to watch. If I
think it's honest. Bigelow's weakest movie.
Sure, completely fair. But like I think Boyega showed some signs that he can handle this darker material. Even his breakout, Attack the Block, like there's a little bit of darkness in there, but that's more of a fun sort of sci-fi thriller. I don't think that's really as dark as what Sonia goes for.
Right. Exactly.
His stuff is really messed up. In particular, like I'm thinking of like certain sequences in Green Room, which like the practical effects and the violence in that thing is insane. I had to look away at some parts because
I'm thinking of like the end of the first act or the beginning of the second act. When they're like fighting on the door. And
exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking of.
Anton Yelchin's character gets like
that's exactly what I'm thinking of. But like I'm also like I think Sonia is really good at directing actors. Like Patrick Stewart's performance in Green Room is one of my favorite performances of recent memory. I think intimidating. We'll have to see, I guess, what Boyega's role is going to be. I don't believe that they've actually like said what his role is in this one. But like, they've obviously talked about it's going to be about American injustices and quote from Variety through bone-breaking action sequences, suspense, and dark humor, which is like sort of running the gamut with what Jeremy does best. Like that's sort of taking in everything that he does well and blending it. And like, I'm interested to see what Boyega does after Star Wars because like, especially in Last Jedi, he wasn't nearly as central as he was in Force Awakens, but in Force Awakens, like he stole the show just as much as Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver did in that movie. I thought like his breakout was just as impressive as either of theirs was.
Right.
But like I feel like he has sort of in Last Jedi. I'm a supporter of Last Jedi, but I feel like his role was a little bit undercut in that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
So I want to see what he does with this material. What do you think like we're going to see from him when putting him in like such a dark project?
Well, you did mention that Saulnier has like a good grasp on dark humor. And if you've seen Blue Ruin, you know what I'm talking about. With all the sequences of violence, he's able to inject, funny scenes into these visceral instances. So I'm just, and you were talking about Attack the Block too, where Boyega has this like kind of action comedy thing where he did well, and he knows how to deliver these lines, especially you saw that in Force Awakens and Last Jedi, where he has like this comical appeal to him and to his characters. So I'm just thinking that's a great combination between Jeremy's dark humor and Boyega's like comedic delivery.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what they do together. I think this is going to be one of my most anticipated movies of the year. I think it's coming out.
I'm hoping this is a return to form for Saulnier because I did not like Hold the Dark.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I didn't love it nearly as much as some of his other stuff, but I thought it was a solid movie. Like, especially like tonally, I think he hit exactly what he was going for. I think the story was a little bit weak.
I thought it was pretty dull and dreary. Besides that, like, huge shooting sequence in the second act, I thought it was just pretty dull.
Sure, but he did follow that up with True Detective season 3, and his episodes in True Detective were great. So I don't think he's like losing any steam. I think he's got it, and I'm excited to see what he does here.
Yeah, as long as the script is there, I think he's going to be fine. And he has Boyega with him, so.
Yeah, that's like I said, that's one of my most anticipated things coming up.
Right.
So next up, I want to talk about. I put this story in here just for you, Sam, because I know how much I know how much you love Scream.
Oh God!
All right, so it was announced this past week via an exclusive from Bloody Disgusting that Gary Barber and Spyglass Media are rebooting the Scream franchise. In sort of that Harvey Weinstein mess, the rights to a lot of Miramax and Dimension movies are split up.
Oh, it's a reboot.
It's undetermined at this point.
Okay.
So the rights for for Dimension went to this group, and so they've got the rights to make what they want to do. And
Okay.
so the article actually says that it's unclear whether or not it's going to be a reboot or Scream 5. But what I've heard is that it seems that reporters seem to be leaning more towards that it's going to be a reboot and not a continuation of Sidney Prescott's story.
Okay.
So even if it's in the same universe and it's, like maybe it's somebody that's been inspired by the events of the first 4 movies and is going to carry it on. But like, I don't think it's going to be a continuation. We're not going to see Neve Campbell. We're not going to see Courtney Cox. We're not going to see David Arquette. That's what I'm hearing right now. That's in no way been confirmed.
Okay.
But I kind of joked before that this story, especially for you, you like Scream. I'm not throwing you under the bus to say you didn't.
Right.
It's one of my favorite movies of all time, and
right.
you like this. So what are your thoughts on this?
I'm just thinking, I didn't see the other movies. I saw the first one recently for Halloween, just for fun. I liked the movie. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was entertaining. I'm just trying to think of, well, especially with this Halloween reboot and how well received that is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to think of if this is like the trajectory they were trying to go for. I'd say I'm excited for it.
Okay.
If it's in that, certain area.
Yeah. Now, I know we spoke about it a while ago, but what were your thoughts on the Halloween reboot? Because I'm asking that because I want to know, like, do you think this would be better handled in somebody like Blumhouse's hands? Because Blumhouse is the one that sort of led the charge in rebooting Halloween.
Well, I don't know, because Halloween had this more, sinister tone to it,
mm-hmm.
and Scream movies have like this comical tone to it.
Yep.
So I'm thinking if they know how to handle the story and they know like the background of the story and the characters involved and like the meta aspects of it, I think they can handle it well. Yep. I don't know if I wanted to go through Blumhouse because I don't think that Ghostface is a very imposing figure.
Sure.
So it'd be weird if they went that like a more serious route.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, but I also like the reason I wanted to ask that also is because I think Blumhouse could actually handle it pretty well. They did the Happy Death Day movies, and I bring that up because I would actually love to see Christopher Landon, who directed both of those movies, direct this. I think he blended horror and comedy so well in Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You. And the movie got better. Like the sequel was better than the original.
Really?
It's hard to do. And, those trailers weren't great, honestly, if I'm being completely honest.
I didn't watch them.
And yeah, it's like, I think that's why they did decently well at the box office, but I think it was more from word of mouth. Like people were like, oh, this is actually like a surprise hit. And I watched them both pretty recently as well. I watched the first one right before the second one came out, and then I watched the second one in theaters earlier this year, and I loved it. I love both of them. I think they're both like really great sort of modern horror slashers. Some of the better slashers that we've seen recently, like the Babyface slasher is sort of like this weird creature that like it's interesting. I don't want to spoil too much of the movie, but because I want everybody to seek them out. But it's
kind of reminiscent of Ghostface in a little way, right?
in some ways, like the blending of the horror and comedy and being like very meta in a certain way, blending in that Groundhog Day element. Like I think Christopher Landon's like extremely talented. I know he's working on something right now, Blumhouse, with Catherine Newton from Detective Pikachu and Big Little Lies.
Okay.
But and I know that's his next project. But if the ball does continue to roll with this, I want to see him come in. I can't think of anybody other than him. Obviously, the great Wes Craven has passed away. Rest in peace. And Kevin Williamson, who wrote the other Scream movies, is right now not reported to be attached to this project.
Interesting.
So if you're bringing in a fresh voice, I think Christopher Landon is the best person to bring in.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I didn't really think about Happy Death Day. I was just thinking more of like sinister and...
No, yeah, which is fair.
Yeah.
Like Blumhouse is known for doing sort of their darker, low-budget horror. But I think it would have been interesting to see them go there. We haven't really seen too much from Gary Barber with this new Spyglass company, so we'll have to see what goes on there. But,
did you watch the other Scream movies?
I've seen all of them. Yes, I've seen all of them. I like most of them. I like Scream. I like all of them. My favorites are Scream 1 and Scream 4.
Okay.
Obviously, like I said, Scream 1 is like in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. It was like definitive for me, like loving the horror genre and stuff like that.
Makes sense.
None of the other ones lived up to that height, but I think they're all pretty good.
They all hold their own water is what you're saying.
Yeah, very much so. So okay. I think it'll be interesting.
I might give them a chance just before this movie comes out then.
Yeah, you should. They're interesting. Like I think you, like, knowing your sort of taste and what you said about Scream 1, I think you might like them all about at the same level.
Okay.
Because they all kind of
promising.
Yeah, they employ sort of the same strategy, and they have the same sort of comedy and blending of that sort of writing style. So I think you'll enjoy them.
Okay.
But I guess we'll have to see whether or not this is a continuation or a reboot, and then we'll take it from there and see what happens.
I think they're all on Netflix too, so I might just binge them.
Yeah, you should. So we'll go rapid fire through a couple of these last topics for the time purposes. But obviously, Fantastic Beasts 3 got greenlit this week. They're filming in Brazil. The movie struggled a little bit to get greenlit because of the reaction to the previous two Fantastic Beasts. I do not like the first Fantastic Beasts movie. I actually am in the minority in liking the second one a decent amount. They brought in a new writer.
Thank God.
Steve Kloves, who's going to help J.K. Rowling sort of like rein in her vision. And he was actually a writer on almost all, I believe, actually all of the previous Harry Potter movies, not Fantastic Beasts related. So hopefully he'll sort of get this franchise back on track. Do you have any quick comments on that?
I'm hoping it's just a return to form because I love the Harry Potter franchise.
Yep.
Like, it's my favorite franchise, honestly, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I was just watching Goblet of Fire this morning. So.
Yeah, so I'm like, I liked the first one. I did not like the second movie.
Okay.
Did not like it. Just messy writing, too many things going on, bad pacing. So I'm just hoping this is a return to form, honestly.
Yeah. Let's hope so. And then we obviously got Frozen 2 reactions this week. I'll just quickly touch on that. Most of the reactions were pretty positive. Most people said that this is equal to, if not better, than the original Frozen.
That's great. Yeah.
I like the original Frozen. It's not my favorite movie, but I do like it a lot, and I'm excited for this.
Yeah, same. I'm really looking forward to it. I really like the first one, so I'm really looking forward to this one too.
Cool. And then a couple new trailers that I want to touch on that came out this week. Leigh Whannell, who directed Upgrade, who wrote the Saw movies, wrote Insidious. He works a lot with James Wan. His new movie, The Invisible Man, is coming out. This is separate from the Dark Universe bomb that we saw a couple years ago with The Mummy. It's its own sort of entity starring Elizabeth Moss. And I think this trailer is incredible.
I mean, I really like the trailer. I like it. I thought and Elizabeth Moss is a great actress. If you've seen, Mad Men, if you've seen, what is it, Handmaid's Tale?
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to it. The only thing that concerns me about this is the release date.
Okay, the February release?
Yes.
I believe Upgrade was also a February release, or maybe March, but it was earlier in the year. I do get your concern completely. But I also then say Get Out came out in February. So
true, that is true, but it was a debut feature for unknown.
Yeah, I can completely understand. But did you like this trailer?
I did. Yeah, I liked it when I saw it. I saw it in the theater when I saw what is it, Dr. Sleep. I saw it as a part of the pre-show.
Okay, cool.
So I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
And then.
Have you seen any of the previous Invisible Man movies? I have not personally, actually. Those are the monster movies that I have a hole in my knowledge in.
Like the first one came out in 1933?
Yes, I believe so.
No, I have not, no.
Okay. So I think this is exciting. I like the team that's involved, and I'm excited to see what Leigh Whannell does after Upgrade.
Yeah, it looks pretty solid, not gonna lie.
And the teaser that I want to spend a little bit more time on is Soul, Pixar's upcoming movie. They've got Onward coming out in March, and then in June of next year, 2020, they've got this movie called Soul coming out. We received an announcement back in August at D23 that Jamie Foxx, Tina Fey, Felicia Rashad, and Daveed Diggs are going to join this cast. We didn't know too much about the plot, but we knew it was going to be sort of like existential, kind of like Inside Out. Obviously, director of Inside Out, Pete Docter, is directing this. Score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who are doing the score for the Watchmen series right now, and
fantastic.
That score is incredible. That show is incredible.
You can always just trust them with scoring.
Yeah, and even so much as like in this teaser trailer, like I don't know if they actually wrote that music, but like that piano tune, like it had me. I heard the story about this sort of like struggling artist who gets his big break, and then an accident sort of like splits his soul from his body, and he goes on this journey. I think this is going to be like instant classic. Like,
I was about to say that, does he die in the trailer?
So like some of the reports have said he dies, some of the reports have said an accident. So I wouldn't be surprised if like it's like a death, but maybe he comes back to life after he learns some sort of lessons.
So it's like a Christmas Carol kind of deal.
A little bit. I wouldn't be surprised. But like Pete Docter obviously did Inside Out, and this looks like it has like sort of a similar vibe to it. What's your previous like experience with Pete Docter's movies, with like movies like Up and Inside Out?
I love them. I mean, if you don't like them, something's wrong with you. I mean, they're like masterpieces. They're like modern cartoon classics. I mean, you can't really say anything about it. I mean, if you saw the trailer, you've seen those movies, you have to be excited for this movie.
Yeah, did you like this teaser?
Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I've come out publicly. I've tweeted this. I've said like I think this is going to be like one of the best Pixar movies we've ever seen, and as well as anybody that Pixar is like sort of. I'm a Pixar fanboy. Like,
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're listening, Raj is very biased towards Pixar.
I am, but
so take it with a grain of salt.
But also me saying that like something is going to be like top tier Pixar, like that puts it in the echelon of Toy Story, which is like my favorite movie of all time. Inside Out, Toy Story 3, like Coco, Ratatouille, those are some of my favorite Pixar movies.
Because you like The Good Dinosaur, right?
I did like The Good Dinosaur. I didn't love it, but I liked it.
It went under the radar that year. No one talked about it. It just went. It was on and off. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. It's a solid movie. I don't think it's an excellent movie by any means, but
okay.
But like I feel like, at least from my perspective, me putting this in the same category as like those Pixar movies that I love, like if it does,
it shows your faith in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, and you're completely justified in doing so with the cast, the score, the director, the studio. So it's like everything going for it.
Yeah, I think Pete Docter is the most creative and like talented person at Pixar. Now he's running that company after Lasseter went out. So I just have such high hopes for this movie, and I hope it lives up to it.
Yeah, they're definitely not missing a beat.
No.
They're doing well over there.
Yeah. So now that we've kind of run through some of the bigger news stories of this week, we want to run into some reviews of some movies that came out this week.
Let's go.
Go ahead and get started.
I'm ready.
Let's go ahead and get started with Dr. Sleep. I saw it a couple weeks ago, right before Halloween, and you saw it, I believe, this past weekend.
I saw it Thursday, yep.
Yeah, this is the follow-up to, quote-unquote follow-up to The Shining, based more off the book. People that do not know, Stephen King, like, notably does not like the Shining movie because Stanley Kubrick kind of shies away. Very famously does not like. And like it's because the book and the movie are quite different.
Right.
So when this movie was first announced, they were kind of saying that this was going to be a little bit more like based on the book and less based on the movie. But I think it's actually like pretty loyal to both. And that's kind of evident in the trailers and in the marketing. Like you got Ewan McGregor, who plays Dan Torrance, the kid from The Shining. He's like, peeking his face in through the door that Jack Nicholson famously bashed in The Shining. And I think this movie is the best horror movie that came out this year. It's probably going to make my top 10. I love Mike Flanagan. Haunting of Hill House is one of the best horror things I've seen ever, honestly. And I think he nails it in this. I think it sort of balances like that. Well, I haven't read the book for Dr. Sleep, but from my understanding, he balances that level of like disturbing, like thrilling horror to like the personal, like very human alcoholism and anxiety and depression, and like exploring what Dan Torrance, Ewan McGregor, is going through after those experiences that he went through as a kid with his father trying to kill him.
Right.
What did you think of this movie?
I really liked it. I thought it was really good. I agree with you. It's the best horror movie of the year. And I'm just thinking, I wanted to ask you, what did you think about the recasting of certain characters?
Yeah, I liked it. I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but I did like what they did. They obviously they recasted some characters to follow up right off the bat from the end of The Shining, and I think they used just enough of those characters to give us a satisfying wrap up to a lot of that stuff. And as the movie progresses, like we see, I think Ewan McGregor is also great for that role. I think he has this sort of thing about him where he can play this like depressed sort of like quiet person very well. No,
he does it really well.
Yeah, and I think I don't think anything in this movie didn't work. I think everything worked pretty well for me.
I disagree with you.
Okay.
I have one big criticism with the movie. I was thinking that, up until the third act, I thought it was doing a great job. And then it goes into like the big showdown, at the setting. I was thinking up until that point, they had great ideas with the Easter eggs, referencing the last movie and, talking about what happened in the past. But it was still its own movie up until the third act, where it just kind of goes off the deep end, I want to say.
Okay, interesting. So
it loses a lot of its individuality because it just references too much of The Shining.
That's very fair. And slight spoilers, I guess, for Dr. Sleep. This is in the trailer, so it's not too big of a spoiler, but what Sam is referencing is the return to the Overlook Hotel. Again, I haven't read the books, but my understanding is that the Overlook is actually burned down in the original Shining book, so it's not even in the Dr. Sleep book.
Right.
So that obviously impacted the way that Flanagan told the story. But I think there are certain things, again, I don't want to get into spoilers here, but there are certain things that happen when Dan goes back to the Overlook that kind of bring his story full circle that I think are why that sequence is so necessary. I agree
Yeah.
with you that it does lose its individuality, and I love like the stuff with the True Knot and like their sort of like weird, like hipster, like
Yeah. No. Yeah.
crazy mission. Like I like that stuff a lot, and you know we kind of lose a little bit of track with them in that ending sequence. But like still, Rebecca Ferguson is there, and she's incredible in this movie.
Oh yeah.
Her
Honestly.
performance is the standout.
Yeah, easily. I wanted to reference that too, and I wanted to talk to you about a certain scene in the second act with a certain child character.
Yeah.
Certain...
Oh my God, that scene is insane.
I know how you are with like violence against children. So I just wanted to know your thoughts about that sequence.
I think that is the most upsetting scene I've seen this year, but is also probably one of the best scenes I've seen this year in terms of its execution. Flanagan is great at handling sort of this like really disturbing stuff. Going back to Hush on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
what she did in 2016. Like there's some really upsetting scenes in that movie, and like he's very good at making like those disturbing things feel essential, which I think a lot of directors struggle with. And I think like this scene in particular, they're talking about the actor that they got to play that child.
That was fantastic. Yes, I loved it. I loved it.
It's really good. It's one of the best scenes. I'm debating between that scene and a particular scene that happened towards the end of the movie as my two favorite scenes of the movie, but that scene is absolutely astounding.
And did you notice like his signature with like the hand thing?
Yes, yeah, I did.
So Flanagan also did Gerald's Game, another Stephen King adaptation, and something happened to that character with their hand.
Yep.
And then in this movie, there's another character with something happens to their hand. So I'm just thinking it's like a kind of thing that his signature now in this movie.
It does seem like it. I was actually listening to an interview with him last night where he kind of referenced that. And he was talking about like the vulnerability, like how about you do everything with your hand, so when your hand is injured, like that, you know, that's a scary thing. And I think it's an interesting thing that he plugs in there, and it works really well. When he does it, it's pretty upsetting, you know, going back to that green room reference from earlier too. Like a hand gets sort of like mangled, for lack of a better word. It's hard to watch, and
it's worse in Gerald's Game than in this one, but it's still pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. But yeah, I really love Dr. Sleep, but it's one of my favorite movies of the year.
All right.
So did you the next movie I want to touch on, the other wide release from this week, was Last Christmas. Did you catch Last Christmas?
I had zero interest in Last Christmas.
Okay. So Last Christmas is obviously the rom-com first sort of like kickoff to the holiday season, starring Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones and Henry Golding of Crazy Rich Asians fame. Written by Emma Thompson, who also stars in the movie, and directed by Paul Feig. I think I did see the movie. I think it's okay. I don't think it's great. Another thing that Sam knows about me that some of the listeners might not know, I love rom-coms. And I'm hit or miss on Christmas movies, I guess, but I think it's billed as a rom-com, and the trailers tried to sell the comedy. It's not funny. The movie's not funny. There was maybe one big laugh in the entire movie that came in the last 2 minutes, which is a shame because Emma Thompson is incredible, and like the fact that she wrote this, I feel upset saying that like it wasn't funny, because I think she's a funny individual and I think she's so talented.
It seemed pretty hammy off the trailers.
And I think like the drama stuff works much better. It balances the drama and the comedy pretty well. And the drama stuff works pretty well, but then like it takes sort of like a turn towards the end as well with the drama, and like that it felt like it sort of like took all that drama that worked really well throughout the movie and threw it in the trash. Like it kind of like it didn't wrap it up in a satisfying way, I guess.
Kind of a weird release date too, in November.
Yeah, in November.
Considering it's a Christmas movie.
And I don't know how, I don't think we've really seen too much about the box office numbers at this point, but I don't think it's performing like particularly great. But I
don't recall seeing any TV spots for it either.
No, I really didn't either. But like, I'd say it's worth seeing on like when it comes on home video and stuff, like because Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding are both like great. They're great performers. They're both so charming, and I would like to see the two of them like sort of take on more like romance or romantic comedies in the future against one another. I think that would be interesting. It just didn't work particularly well in this one, but they're charming enough to hold your interest and hold your attention. But it kind of missed the mark in terms of the talent involved, which is a shame, but everybody kind of has misses, and
It
this
sounds like the type of movie you would watch when you're bored at home and you have nothing else to watch.
it's a good plane watch. I
Yeah,
think that's the best.
that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and towards the holiday season, it might pick up some traction. People will see it, like maybe
Like
towards the end of November.
go on TNT or USA middle
Yes.
of December and just.
Yeah. So I actually did want to ask you here, like, what are your thoughts on Love Actually?
I haven't seen it either. I haven't seen
Okay.
that one now.
Okay. That I love that movie, and that's another sort of divisive like holiday rom com. I think that one is particularly better. And I'd say like if you're sort of like if you're deciding between getting out to the theaters this holiday season to see Last Christmas or sitting at home and watching Love Actually on Netflix, I'd say you can probably stay at home. All right.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Again, like I hate saying that. I don't like to bash on movies, but it just missed the mark for me.
I don't know how much you like Paul Feig's movies too. So.
I love Paul Feig. A Simple Favor was great, like a nice little surprise, and obviously like Bridesmaids is awesome. I actually didn't see his Ghostbusters, which I need to catch up on, but I love Paul Feig. I think he's awesome. So let's go ahead and dive into the biggest, quote unquote, biggest release of this week.
Let's go.
Biggest in terms of scale, not biggest in terms of actual release, because it's only like in 5 theaters throughout the entire country.
Right.
And props to Sam for driving like an hour to go see this movie.
Dude, I left my house at 6:30. I got home at 12 a.m.
Yeah, exactly. And I caught it back it was a closing night film at Middleburg Film Festival here in Virginia a few weeks back. So I've been sitting on it for a couple weeks now. That's Martin Scorsese's Irishman, which brings together, reteams him with Robert De Niro and brings Joe Pesci, quote unquote, out of retirement, and now brings in Al Pacino into the mix. And this is one of the best movies of the year.
Easily.
No doubt. This is one of Martin Scorsese's best movies. It's like 3.5 hours long, and it flies.
Yeah, you don't feel it at all.
Not at all. You're sitting there for 3.5 hours, and like you're like, oh, I want more. I want more with these characters.
It just progresses so naturally.
It is very well paced. It's exquisite filmmaking. I love The Wolf of Wall Street and Silence. Actually, those are like two of my favorite Scorsese's.
Right.
I'd have to pair those with like Taxi Driver, which I know you love as well.
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and I think this sort of enters that like top 5 tier Martin Scorsese for me personally.
Easily. I can't wait to see it when it comes on Netflix.
Let me hear some of your thoughts about it, because I know you briefly told me that you loved it, but I didn't hear like too much of your analysis.
Well, I mean, I only saw it last night, so I haven't had much time to sit on it.
Sure.
I spent like the first half trying to figure out what the movie was essentially, but then like there's a certain scene with like a certain character after. Can we say spoilers? I don't know if like this is a spoiler.
Let's avoid spoilers since it's not on Netflix yet.
Okay, so there's like a certain sequence in the second act where Jimmy Hoffa's or Al Pacino's character Jimmy Hoffa is trying to get something from another character, and they're in this like certain club area, and there's just like the way these characters interact. You're hung on every single word and every single pause. You're looking at the way they emote their faces, and the direction is perfect, and I just couldn't keep my eyes off the screen.
Yeah, let me ask you, what did you think of the de-aging technology? Obviously, it was sort of storied that Scorsese spent like $200 million in this movie to make like Robert De Niro like look like he was in his 40s again for a good portion of the movie. Did it distract you at all? Did you like it?
Not really. I mean, if you're looking for it, you can see it, but it's not as bad as like how we mentioned The Last Jedi.
Sure.
So I mean, if you're looking for it, you can notice it, but it's like it's not as bad. And like when you see like the characters go from like their older original selves to like the I want to say glossy, but like the younger selves, it's not a huge difference. Like you can see like the natural progression of their aging.
Yeah, where does this fall for you in sort of like the upper echelon of Martin Scorsese movies?
Oh God, man, that's a tough one, man. I just saw it last night. So.
And it is a lot to take in. There's like 20 different storylines in this movie.
Do you know how many movies Scorsese has made that are great?
Yeah,
that are masterpieces.
Well, it's like I actually sat down last night and watched The Wolf of Wall Street again for the first time in about a year. It's been a while since I had last seen it, and that's probably my favorite. That or Taxi Driver is my favorite Scorsese, and like.
It's funny you mentioned that because like I went to get a haircut a couple weeks ago, and the barbers had it on TV, and like my barber just was watching TV instead of cutting my hair. I was like, dude, cut my hair.
Yeah, but that's the thing about Scorsese is like his movies they captivate you. Like
exactly. No, I was with him. I was watching the movie with him, and then I noticed like 20 minutes went by. I was like, dude, he hasn't cut my hair in 20 minutes.
Yeah, right. That's what I love about it because it's like it's not a fast-paced movie per se, and that's like Scorsese like takes his time obviously. 3.5 hours,
and you don't feel it.
You don't feel it at all, and it's like each sort of progression and like sticking with Robert De Niro through this journey that he takes, it's literally like almost a lifetime journey. Like,
It is, literally.
and it's like you're so invested to see like what are his next steps, what's his long-term game, does he have a long-term game, like what are all these other peripheral characters doing around him. It's astounding. Did you
Yeah.
have like a standout performance from the three?
I wanted to talk about Joe Pesci
Yes, he's great.
and the third act
Uh-huh.
from when, like, you know, there's a certain thing where he tells Robert De Niro's character to do something,
Yep.
and then that something happens, and then they
Mhm.
go to like this other place,
Hmm.
and then there's like the acting from like the last hour of Pesci is astounding.
Yeah, it's so good.
Like, there's
I would-
no nitpick I can think of for
I
the
would-
movie.
I'm pretty confident that De Niro will and Pacino will both get nominated. I think Pesci's sort of like on the border of
Mhm.
that supporting actor race.
No,
but,
yeah, definitely. But I just wanted to mention because no one's talking about it.
No, yeah, of course. I think like his performance might be the best of the three, quite honestly. But he
Yeah.
also has the least screen time of the three, which is understandable.
And it's
But,
like astounding because like he came out of retirement for this movie. And
Yeah,
he
and
hasn't missed a beat. He hasn't missed a beat.
he really hasn't, and like I think that's what's gonna hurt him about like getting nominated. If you want to talk Oscars, not that he really cares at this point. He's an
Yeah.
Oscar winner, but like
Yeah.
he's not gonna go in campaign. Like at the opening night Q&A at New York Film Festival when this premiered, they like, you know, they asked Joe like to talk about his character and talk about coming out of retirement to do this movie, and he was just like, no. Like I'm not gonna answer your question. It's just like that. I just love that he like doesn't care. Like
Yeah, because it's like his Oscar speech was like what, 5 words?
5 words. Yeah, that like it's just so great. I love Joe Pesci. I think he's
Yeah.
like the funniest, but he's like, it's just so good to see him again because we haven't seen him in like 20 years or something like that.
I wanted to ask you about a certain scene.
Hmm.
I mentioned in the third act where Joe Pesci's character tells Robert De Niro's character to do something,
Hmm.
and they're talking in that little like motel diner or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Did you notice De Niro looking at the camera every time they cut to him?
No, I didn't actually.
He kept like every time Pesci's character said something to him, there was a pause. Scorsese or the DP would shift to De Niro's character, and De Niro would like split second stare at the camera and then look back at Joe Pesci's character every single time for the entire scene. I don't know if that was like a production flaw or
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if that had anything to do with like the de-aging. And I don't think he was actually de-aged at that point. I guess it was all makeup at that point.
he was older at that point. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you wanted to like if you noticed that at all. I was like,
No,
that was weird.
That's interesting. I'll have to keep an eye out for that when it comes on Netflix. Everybody, please seek out this movie, November 7th. It will be on Netflix. Split it into 2 watches or 3 watches if you have to because of the runtime. But like, it is going to be so worth your time. Put your phone away. Watch this movie.
You're not even gonna watch. You're gonna watch it in one sitting. That's how good it is.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So now that we've sort of run through a lot of the releases from this week, let's go ahead and dive into what Sam and I thought would be a good idea to do leading up to the Academy Awards in February is to talk about what we think is are sort of the leading contenders for Best Picture, Best Actor, and so on and so forth, and dive into who we think like might get nominated, who we should be talking about in the upcoming months, who you'll be hearing a lot of, and let's go ahead and start with The Irishman. I currently would say we're going to talk specifically about Best Picture today, and we'll talk about other categories in future episodes. But I think Best Picture right now, The Irishman is your favorite to win.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. But I'm just thinking about what happened last year, so I don't know if I want to say that definitively.
Yeah,
I'm saying it is my favorite for the Best Picture.
Sure. And obviously Sam is referencing Roma not getting the win, probably because it was a Netflix movie last year, which is a shame because Roma is a masterpiece.
It is.
But I think this having Cuarón is respected, but Scorsese is like a god to the Academy.
Right, exactly.
And even though he's only won once, like everything he does gets nominated, other than Silence, which unfortunate.
And along with Scorsese, you have De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci.
Yeah, exactly,
So
exactly. It's like this movie was made for the Academy. I know a lot of people joke because the first teaser came out like during last year's Academy Awards. That sort of like gun where you saw like the bullet falling and all the names. Basically, it's just like, look who we got. We got Martin Scorsese. We got Robert De Niro. We got Al Pacino. Oh, and we got Joe Pesci. Like, it's basically like, hey, you're watching the Academy Awards. This is who's gonna win Best Picture next year. And like now the movie's been released and a lot of people have seen it, and critics have reacted to it. The Academy's been reacting to it. It feels like that is the case, and I don't think it's undeserving of that praise.
I feel like it's like across the board, like critics, regular moviegoers.
Oh yeah, that's the thing is like Scorsese, he makes like sort of like indie scale movies in like in terms of like thought,
Story,
yeah, story, and like but like he puts like such like a wide populist appeal and like a grandeur to like what he does that like it appeals to everybody, and like
it's accessible, but it's not dumbed down.
Exactly, and like this is like a quote unquote perfect dad movie. Like dads are gonna love this movie, and like dads make up like a good majority of the Academy at this point, and like. And it's just like with again going back to having all that talent that has like basically gets nominated every time their name is attached to something. Like,
so if you're listening to this and you're a better, bet on Irishman.
Yeah. I think right now the Irishman's biggest competition is actually another Hollywood royalty director, Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I think that movie came out in August, which is not like a prime spot, I guess, for award season movies, but it's held on. It's held on, which I don't think a lot of people anticipated.
I told Raj about this. I saw it twice. I saw it when it came out opening weekend, and I saw it 6 weeks later. In the 6th week, it was sold out.
That's insane. That is literally insane.
There wasn't a single seat inside that theater that wasn't filled.
And this movie did do insanely well at the box office.
It did better than Glorious Bastards.
Yeah, which is like crazy. I know Tarantino does again like have sort of that wide appeal. And people will go when they see like Quentin Tarantino's name attached to something, they'll go out and see it. His name is kind of like Martin Scorsese's.
They go out of their way to see it.
Yeah, so worldwide, I just looked it up. It's made just under $371 million, which is
considering it's not a Marvel tentpole movie. That's pretty fucking great.
That and like almost 3 hours runtime as well. Like for this like mid-budget sort of like quote unquote dying sort of breed of movies. Like this thing has legs. This thing is not going away. Obviously, Brad Pitt is sort of like your favorite to win supporting actor right now. Margot Robbie's got Bombshell coming out. Leo's always in the conversation. So like this movie has just kind of lasted, and we'll get into like director and stuff a little bit in the coming weeks. But I think Tarantino might actually be your favorite to win Best Director because he's never won it before.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
This is a leader for screenplay. I think this is going to win a lot of Academy Awards come February. Again, like this also speaks to a lot of people talk about this. Hollywood loves movies about Hollywood, and I don't think there's anything different here, especially when it's made with this kind of expert precision.
Right.
By somebody that the Academy loves. Quentin Tarantino's always in the running every time he's got something coming out, and deservedly so. This movie is great, and I wouldn't be surprised if it steals that leading spot from The Irishman.
But we can only say this only knowing if the Academy got their heads out of their asses, considering what they did last year.
Let's hope so, because last year was a bit of a bit of a fluke. But let's hope so. You said you saw it twice, right?
I saw it twice. Yep.
And
it holds up. It holds up.
Does it get better on the second watch?
I would say you enjoy it more on the second watch because you know what it is.
Okay.
Because like when the first time I saw it, the same thing with Irishman. I was just trying to figure out what kind of movie it was.
Sure.
And it's just like you're just taking a ride with these characters, essentially.
Yeah.
And that final sequence in that third act with Brad Pitt's character,
it's incredible.
It's even better in the second time.
I can't wait to watch the second time.
Because you're just anticipating it, just waiting for it.
Yeah.
You're watching it closely, so it's like it's even better.
Yeah. Also, I believe they did like a re-release last weekend for a weekend with a little bit of additional footage prior to the Blu-ray release, which is probably right around the corner. Do you think that helped its cause?
In terms of what, box office or just exposure?
Overall, like even for Best Picture.
I don't know. I don't think people really saw it for that. For Best Picture?
Yeah.
No, because I don't think voters were looking out for that extra release.
Okay.
I think it's just like they're just looking at the initial release.
Sure.
But I mean, it helps bring it to relevancy again.
Yeah. Which
it could only help them.
If you let me ask you this: if you had a vote between this and The Irishman, which one would you take?
In what category?
In Best Picture. Let's stick specifically to Best Picture right now. Let me ask you, which one is your favorite between the two? And then if you had to place money on it, which one would you pick would win Best Picture?
Okay, so my favorite of the two is The Irishman.
Okay. I
would say it's a better story, and it just it captivated. It was more captivating.
Okay.
But I don't know if they're gonna give the award for Best Director to Scorsese, they're gonna go Once Upon a Time, and if it's flip flopped, if they give it to Irishman, they're gonna give it to Tarantino. So it's not like one-sided. I'm thinking they're going to balance it out.
Kind of like a Moonlight La La Land split.
Exactly.
Where Giselle got that director and then
Yep.
Moonlight got Best Picture. Okay,
Yep.
I could definitely see that happening, and I think I would not be surprised at all if that's the case. And you make a very good point. I think that might be actually what we end up seeing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess your next sort of like quote unquote tier of Best Picture nominees, there's a couple movies that I think have sort of they're right on the periphery of those two other movies.
Right.
Let's start with Marriage Story, which will be on Netflix at the beginning of December. I believe it's also in limited run in theaters right now. This actually opened Middleburg back in mid-October. And this movie is also in my top 10 of the year right now. This movie, I think it's small scale. Noah Baumbach directed, starring Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, Laura Dern, and Ray Liotta and Alan Alda. I think this movie has a very good chance of winning this award. I've heard a few people say that like the majority of the Academy is divorced, and that's like the realness of this movie is like gonna speak to them in a way that they.
Do you remember what happened to us in the film festival?
Yes. I was actually gonna mention that. Do you want to go ahead and tell the story?
No, you can go ahead. It was more with you anyway.
So we were standing in line the next day for a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and a lady comes behind us and asks if we had seen it, and I had gone to the premiere the previous night, and she said she had to walk out because she was divorced, and she was like, it was just way too real. It struck way too close to home, and I think that is going to speak to the Academy, especially if they can all relate to it. It's very powerful filmmaking. It's between Meyerowitz stories and this, like Noah Baumbach's best movies in my personal opinion. I also think Adam Driver, like that's the performance of the year. Without a doubt, he's definitely your front runner for best actor. And he is insane in this movie. He has.
I didn't go because it was $50,
and it was sold out. It sold
out.
Yeah.
And I already have Netflix, so.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, it'll be on Netflix in less than a month, and I think a lot of people are going to tune into this because of the star power between Driver and Scarlett Johansson, who is also like I think she's my favorite female performance of this year, right behind Driver.
Wow.
Like,
awesome.
they need each other to perform that well, and Driver's big scenes come because of Scarlett Johansson, and like they play so well off each other, and like there's these shouting battles between the two, and like they're like bawling and like their faces are red, and it's like they're just screaming at each other, but it's like you can't look away. It's so engrossing, and it's very hard to watch at times because it is very real. But like in terms of like I don't remember the last time a movie with like strict like just dialogue straight up like just people yelling at each other. I don't think a movie like since Steve Jobs has sort of like captivated me this way with just like people going back and forth. I also think like Laura Dern is your front runner for supporting actress right now, and I think that's going to help this movie's case. This thing is really good, and I can't wait for you to see it, Tim.
The only other thing is it's a Netflix movie, so
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how they receive it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much money they put behind this and Irishman, like which one they lean more towards. Because last year they had clear cut like Roma, they were going gung ho with Roma, and this year they got more. Next up on this list is something that I know you're going to be very excited to talk about: Bong Joon-ho's Parasite.
Yes.
This thing is in my top 2 favorite movies of the year. I believe the same for you. I think we have the same 1 and 2 right now.
You don't have the same number 1 as me. I guarantee it.
Isn't it Waves?
No, it's Avengers Endgame.
Oh, okay. We'll keep that conversation, I guess, for a different time.
Let's hope Scorsese isn't listening in on this.
But Parasite is astounding. I don't think I know we just saw Roma last year as like an international film that picked up a lot of like awards and traction, but like even like with that, I don't remember the last time like a foreign film had this kind of support behind it, and like
especially a South Korean movie.
Yeah,
South Korean movies haven't been nominated.
Never been nominated, which shocking after Burning last year and stuff like that. But
oh my god, dude,
this thing is incredible. It's Bong Joon-ho's best movie.
It's his best movie. Yep.
It's a masterpiece. Like I don't think there's any better word for it.
If you want a primer for this movie, a lot of his movies are on Netflix.
Yeah, they are.
You have Mother, Memories of a Murder. You have Host. You have Okja. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and watch them.
Yeah.
Just do yourself a favor.
I want you to sort of like vouch for this one since I vouched a little bit for Marriage Story. I want you to go to bat for this one.
Well, yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it just tells the story of a family that tells the story of two families essentially. One is in poverty and one that's rich, and then the way these families interact with each other and the way they take advantage of each other. It's a great commentary of the way South Korean classist societies work. But it's not just a commentary on that; it's also its own story, and it has its own twists as well.
Oh my god, the twists!
I just remember, just like the second the movie ended, we just all looked at each other and was like, in just disbelief of what we saw.
Yeah, it's really one of those kind of movies, and like it lives up to the hype. Like people are saying like these twists and turns, and I went into it not skeptical, but I was just like, how can it live up to this kind of praise? And it like not only did it live up to it, it exceeded those expectations.
It did. I just don't understand how he did it.
It blends like horror, thriller, family drama, like you said, class relations, comedy. It's so funny. The first half of this movie is one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. It's hilarious. There's just so much going on in this movie, and it's blended like perfectly.
Like I remember like talking to people about it. It's like, how would you describe the movie you saw? And you just like you look at each other like you have no idea how to describe it because it's like it's its own movie.
Yeah,
like I've never seen a movie like it.
It's so unique. That's so true. I think you'll know what I'm talking about when I say like there's like a turning point in the middle of the movie where like the family and I want to avoid spoilers on this one even more than anything else. The family in poverty does something, and it's like there's like it kind of like turns the movie from like sort of that comedy that we were just talking about to this really like dark, like very like gripping, and like you could like sort of sense it in the theater that like everybody was like
shift.
Oh my god, yes. Like just, everybody was holding their breath, like
you feel it in the air. Yeah,
people were like gasping. It was insane. This is like if I had to sort of pick from this lot of leaders, I think this would be the one that I would want to win.
Like a dark horse.
Yeah, I think it has a chance because like if you follow a lot of like filmmakers and actors and stuff on Twitter and Instagram, like everybody is seeing this thing, and like again, speaking back to Roma, Roma was a Netflix release, and Netflix obviously doesn't tell you how many people watch the movie, and it also doesn't really, we don't get like clear box office numbers on when people go to see these movies in theaters. But like this thing at the sort of like specialty box office, there were like people were reporting that like in New York and LA, this movie opened a limited release in early October, and there were 10 shows at like one theater in the entire town. Each of those shows up like from 10 a.m. when the theater opened till midnight when the theater closed. Each one of those shows was sold out completely.
It feels like people have been talking about it all year. Like,
yes. Oh yeah. Because it premiered. I guess we should mention that it did premiere back in May at Cannes Film Festival. It won the Palme d'Or there.
It's like I've seen a tweet every single day about it.
Oh my god!
Not even a joke.
And it's so deserving. It's so deserving of that praise. I love this movie, and I would love to see it take that Best Picture spot.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess the next tier, I can go ahead and list off a couple of movies that I've got written down here. You have your Toronto Film Festival Audience Award winner Jojo Rabbit, which last year's Audience Award winner was Green Book at Toronto, and that went on to win Best Picture. In the past, Audience Award winners do go on to at least get nominated, and win. At times, you've got like 12 Years a Slave, I believe, won. In the past year, the trend points to this thing at least getting a nomination. You've also got Greta Gerwig's Little Women, which started showing for the Academy and has been pretty well praised since people started seeing it.
They're saying it's just as good as Lady Bird.
Yep, which is excellent.
Or better.
I love hearing that. You've also got the one thing that is sort of like sight unseen at this point by anybody is Sam Mendes' 1917, which is a war movie shot to look like as if it's one take. Roger Deakins shooting this.
Hell yeah.
Just having those two behind the camera, that sort of puts this in that next tier. People have been talking about it. People have been speculating that this thing is going to be a game changer.
Right.
And then another quote unquote dad movie, Ford vs Ferrari, which James Mangold, Christian Bale, Matt Damon. That's sort of like, and it's a crowd pleaser, but it's also expertly made.
I want to talk to you real quick.
Yeah,
you're mentioning a lot of these like awards friendly movies.
Yeah,
I haven't heard you talk about Rise of Skywalker or Avengers Endgame. Do you think they have a chance?
I think if one of them gets in, it's Rise of Skywalker. That's not my Star Wars bias. I think that Endgame was well received, but Disney pushed Black Panther really hard. We saw that last year, and they got the nomination. I think if they have to put their money behind one of these, they're going to put it behind Skywalker because in the past, Star Wars movies have been more Academy Award friendly than the Marvel movies. Obviously, you have this sort of like Scorsese Marvel controversy going on, which I don't even want to get into because I hate listening about it. But like, I think if they have to put their money behind one of these, they're going to put it behind Skywalker because
it's the grand culmination of like 50 years of film.
40 plus years of film, exactly. And like,
it's a cultural phenomenon.
Yeah, it's Disney is campaigning for Endgame.
They shoot themselves in the foot without nominating this movie. It's like if it's a ratings thing, how like there's like a certain issue with like their ratings and all that.
Yeah,
if they don't nominate this, it's like why wouldn't you?
That goes back to that whole conversation that we were having last year around this time of Best Popular Picture, which doesn't look like it's going to happen now. Not this year.
No, I think they can't because of the extreme backlash.
Yeah, which is fair. I think it's completely fair.
Yeah, I think yeah.
But what about you? Do you think either of those two will get in?
I would be surprised if they didn't get in, honestly.
Oh wow, really?
I'm thinking because of like the cultural shift between blockbusters and comic book movies, and with Black Panther last year being nominated, and Logan winning. Did it win?
No,
won, right?
It was nominated for.
It was nominated
for adapted screenplay. It was
so
nominated.
it's like a stepping stone each year. Mm-hmm. You get like a nomination, a smaller nomination, then you get like a bigger nomination. Mm-hmm. Eventually, someone's gonna win something.
Which one between the two?
No, I'm saying eventually.
Oh, okay. But between these two, which one would you have to pick?
Yeah, I say Skywalker.
Skywalker, okay. That's interesting.
Skywalker.
I think Endgame's best chance was Robert Downey Jr. And it doesn't look like he's on the FYC posters and all that kind of stuff, but he's not campaigning, and I think
he doesn't want it.
He doesn't want it. He doesn't necessarily need it. Both acting categories this year are particularly tough.
We heard what happened with like the backlash of what Disney was doing with campaigning, right?
No, I did not.
They didn't like campaign at all for any of like the actors.
Yes,
so after like a certain point, it's like they caved in and saying, okay, we're gonna nominate Downey Jr. or put into consideration Downey Jr. as well. But along with Downey Jr., they said they're gonna put in Renner, Hemsworth, Cheadle, Johansson, and Ruffalo.
Okay, yeah, that's not helping him out.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So it's like they put them all in there.
Who I would love to see. People might snap back at me for this, but who I would love to see, I think the best performance out of that cast was Scarlett Johansson, and I think she's already kind of like in the running for 2 other movies this year between JoJo and Marriage Story.
She's had a hell of a year.
She really has, and like if she got 3, she kind of shoots herself in the foot with these comments that she makes. I don't want to speak on that. I'm trying to avoid all this controversy as much as I can. But like. She delivered, in my opinion, 3 Academy Award worthy performances this year.
Even with JoJo?
Yeah, I think she's really good in JoJo. She's like sort of like she's a bright spot in JoJo. She changes the tone of that movie. So now that we're kind of talking about JoJo, like between JoJo, Little Women, 1917, and Ford vs Ferrari, the 2 of us haven't seen 3 of the 4 of those movies. But do you see all those getting in? If we, of course, go from of course, Best Picture can go anywhere from 5 nominees to 10 nominees. It's trended more towards like 7, 8, 9 in the past couple of years, the way the formula works. I see probably hitting that same number this year, the way that people are talking about some of these movies. But do you think those are the next tier, or would you throw something else in there?
I was thinking, 2 Popes.
2 Popes, yes, that's very true.
That's a big one, but I'm just thinking because it's like, it does have Hopkins and Price, but it's also another Netflix movie.
Yeah, and Middleburg Audience Award winner right there. Let's give another shout out to Middleburg Film Festival.
Round of applause.
I have another question for you. Speaking a bit towards these blockbusters, do you think Joker gets in?
That would surprise me. No, I don't think at all. I don't think if it gets into the Academy Awards, I would say it gets in for Joaquin Phoenix's performance.
Yes, I think that's a guarantee.
It's very low probability that he is in Best Picture. The only reason they would do that is for ratings.
I agree with you. I don't think I don't think it will get in.
It's a long shot.
It's going to make $1 billion at the box office, which.
It's approaching. It's like $50 million short.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Insane. Yeah,
and also, the critics have been a little mixed on this movie. They've all said that Joaquin deservedly should get nominated, but the critics have not loved this movie. But the Academy has really responded to this movie. particularly the actors branch of the Academy, which is the biggest branch of the Academy.
Mm-hmm.
And when the actors are backing somebody like Joaquin and this movie, I think that's enough that could, like, you know, if we do extend to 10 nominations, I think that might be enough having the actors so firmly behind this thing to get it in there in one of those closing spots.
It's interesting you bring that up because you did mention with Scarlett and her controversy. We
Uh-huh.
also have Todd Phillips and his controversy.
Yes, which he continues to shoot himself in the foot as well.
So I mean, if it does, I'd be surprised. I don't see. I wouldn't pull for it in Best Picture, honestly.
Okay.
Not even a nomination.
That's fair. Couple more movies I wanted to talk about is sort of like, you know, they're in there. I think there's about 12 to 13 movies that I have listed here that like have a pretty good chance of getting in.
Mm-hmm.
The first one I want to touch on is, I believe you loved this one, is A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was good as the doc that came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Great companion piece.
Do you think, I'm pretty confident Hanks will get in that supporting actor race. Do you think it has enough momentum to get into the Best Picture race?
Can You Ever Forgive Me get nominated last year for Best Picture?
It did not. It got acting nominations. I believe it might have gotten a screenplay nomination. Which obviously Muriel Heller, who is one of my favorite directors working right now.
Right.
Can You Ever Forgive Me? We both love that movie.
Exactly.
It's great. If you haven't seen it, it's on HBO right now. Seek it out. It's one of the best movies from last year.
Shout out Hugh Grant, baby.
Richard E. Grant. Yeah.
Richard E. Grant.
No, you're good. Yeah, Richard E. Grant. He. I wish he had won supporting actor last year. He was like right there. He was tailing Mahershala.
Green Book messed everything up, man.
Yeah, Green Book had the momentum, but like, you know, that performance, he won a Spirit Award for it, and you know, that was an astounding. And I think
he did get to meet Gaga.
Yes, that's very true.
That was his award for the evening.
That was his award, and I think he himself would say that same thing. But so you think Beautiful Day might get in there though?
Yeah, I think it has a good chance. I wouldn't be surprised if I didn't see it on there.
Interesting. And then another movie that I like this movie actually quite a bit. I don't think it's one of my favorite movies of this year, but it has a lot of momentum. It's what A24 is putting a lot of their backing behind is The Farewell, which came out back in like June, premiered at Sundance, I believe, earlier this year.
I forgot about that movie.
Yeah, it's like, you know, some of us may have forgotten about it, but the Academy certainly has not. You know, I've been looking on like Gold Derby and stuff like that to look at like odds, and like right now it looks like Awkwafina might even get in the Best Actress race. This movie might get a Best Screenplay nomination. Like this thing is firmly in the Best Picture race. Do you think it's like too small and too quirky to get in there? Because I would love to see this movie get in there. I think it was an excellent movie, and I would love to see like a young filmmaker like Lulu Wang get that sort of recognition for this like really personal story that she told.
I think it'd be great for acting, but if I'm pulling for an A24 movie, you know what I'm about to say, right? Which movie it is? Yeah, exactly.
Waves, yes.
Waves, baby. Yeah. Or The Lighthouse.
Oh, The Lighthouse, yes.
That'd be a really fun nomination.
Yeah, and you know, The Lighthouse, I wouldn't count it out per se. I think they'll put like some of their money behind like Willem Dafoe and like cinematography and stuff like that, because I think that's where it has better odds. But like, I would love to see The Lighthouse get in there.
I see screenplay definitely for that one. There's no way it's not going to be nominated for screenplay.
I would love to see that.
It'd be impossible.
Because I'm a unashamed fanboy of The Witch, and I thought that should have gotten in for screenplay because of like the language, and that was so complex. And Eggers does something pretty similar here, where like he loves like sort of doing this like old timey weird dialogue, and it works so well. Like he knows it really well. He does his research, and I have no problem with him. I would have no problem with him getting a major nomination.
Yeah, me neither. That'd be great. That'd be yeah.
So if I wanted to put you on the spot a little bit here, like let's say you're like sort of like top 5 like lock in nominations. If I had to ask you for that, what would you say is like, or not even top 5? Like if I had to ask you, what do you think is locked in for a nomination? What would you say?
For Best Picture?
Yes, for Best Picture. Okay,
so we said Irishman and Once Upon a Time.
Yes.
I'm saying locking in Ford versus Ferrari.
Okay.
I think the reception for that would propel it to nomination along with its cast and its director. I would say those 3, and I would say...
If you want me to go through the list again, we had the Marriage Story and Parasite. We're in sort of the next year. Do you think both of those are locks?
I would say Parasite, yes, because I've seen it. I can't say Marriage Story because I haven't seen it. Sure. But the reception to it would give me a favorable response.
Okay.
I can't really give you a definitive answer for Marriage Story yet. I'll tell you when I see it.
That's fair. And then that next year that we talked about, Jojo Rabbit, Little Women, 1917. We haven't seen a couple of those movies, but the momentum seems to be pretty strong.
I'm saying Skywalker is a lock.
Skywalker gets in there.
Skywalker is a lock just because of how the culture of cinema is progressing, and the nominations in the past with Logan and Black Panther. I'm saying it is a lock.
I hope you're right. I would love to see Rise of Skywalker get in there.
It's the combination of the entire Star Wars Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
How does it not get in?
I would love to see that. I think that's a great call, and
I'd be as disappointed as the Hereditary snub last year.
I think Disney will put their money behind it if the reception is there, because they campaigned pretty hard for Force Awakens. Last Jedi they had campaign running. I don't think it really had the chance because of sort of the split in terms of people liking it versus not liking it. But I think you have a very good point in saying that if this one hits the way that it has the potential to, it could sneak in there, and I wouldn't be surprised. Again, I know when Force Awakens came out,
Dark Horse baby.
There were certain critics associations that edited their picks to put Force Awakens in their best picture list. I believe it was a Broadcast Film Critics Association.
I think it's good precedent.
Yeah, it is. And again, I would love to see it get in there.
What about you? What are your locks?
Yeah, I think Irishman, Once Upon a Time, Marriage Story, Parasite, and JoJo are my 5 locks. I think Ford vs Ferrari is probably a lock as well. So if I had to put 5 to 6 locks, those would be my 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think that next tier is Little Women, 1917, Farewell, and Beautiful Day, and then on the outside looking in is Two Popes and Joker.
So Joker is your dark horse.
Dark horse, yeah. A couple other movies that I guess I wanted to touch on that that could, the chances are slim, but people are definitely talking about them. Bombshell, which is the Roger Ailes story, which Charlize Theron is probably a guarantee to get nominated for her performance as Megyn Kelly. But in terms of Best Picture, I think that's another one that's on the outside looking in. Dolomite Is My Name. I watched this a couple days ago.
Oh, wow, I forgot about that one. I didn't watch it.
It is incredible. I love this movie. That's probably also in my top 10 of this year. It's Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore, making this sort of super low budget movie story about this comedian from back in the day who went out of his way to do this crazy passion project. And Eddie Murphy is outstanding. I've heard a lot of people actually say this, and I think it's true that if Eddie Murphy's uphill climb is to get nominated, but if he gets nominated, he will win because he has he has that precedent of people love him and people want him to have an Academy Award. He's going to have a lot of trouble getting nominated because the actor race is so tight. But if he gets in, I agree that he will win if he gets in.
There's a movie that we're going to hate ourselves for not talking about, Raj.
What's that?
That's Knives Out.
Knives Out is both of us also have that in our top tier of this year. I would love to see that get into Best Picture. That seems to be the most critically acclaimed thing out of all the festivals. It's sort of making the festival rounds right now.
It's definitely getting screenplay. I see Ana de Armas getting actress.
Oh, really?
I would definitely see that.
Oh, wow, yeah, she's great, and I agree. Screenplay is definitely a strong contender.
And Rian Johnson for director.
Oh,
it's his time. It's his time.
I would love to see that. I would really love to see that. And this does seem to be sort of the most universally loved movie from a lot of the other than maybe Parasite.
Surprisingly, considering the backlash last year, Rian Johnson got.
Yeah, but I think a lot of critics, especially they liked The Last Jedi, even though a lot of
definitely.
fans didn't. Yeah, critics love Rian Johnson. He also has a precedent of doing just really great stuff. Looper, Breaking Bad, Last Jedi, and now this. I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that'll definitely.
I was looking at my list. Is wait, hold on, we didn't talk about this.
A couple other I want to talk about. I actually also did have Endgame and Skywalker towards the bottom of my list. But do you think Booksmart could get in there?
Ooh, Booksmart! I love Booksmart.
Booksmart's great.
Booksmart was my top 5 beginning of the year.
Yeah. Do you think it has?
Wow. I don't know. I don't think so.
No. Do you think it could maybe get in Spirit Awards and stuff like that? It's pretty low budget.
Absolutely. I would see it. Spirit, Gotham. Mm-hmm. I would see it in those indie award season, but I don't think so. I don't think it's a major player for the Academy Awards.
Okay, and then we obviously we briefly touched on Waves. We both loved that movie. I think that's again similar to what you're saying. It got nominated for quite a few Gothams, and I think it'll be a major player at the Spirits. I wouldn't be surprised if it wins a lot of Spirits, including like the best feature there. I think Taylor Russell is great. I think Kelvin Harrison is great. Sterling K. Brown is great. In terms of screenplay, this could also get in, but I think that's again speaking more towards the Spirits and not.
We should also let the listeners know we're a bit biased in this movie, just a smidge,
because we're best friends with the cast and director of this movie, so that's where the bias comes from. Yeah. But I think it's appropriate bias because I think this movie really is.
No, yeah, it's incredible. I mean, you can't really describe the same way as Parasite. It's like just if you talk about it, it kind of spoils about it, but it's like. You need to seek this movie out. Wherever it is, drive an hour out to watch this movie.
Pull a Sam and go drive however far you need to go see this thing.
But
like, kind of what you're saying, like not a lot of people have seen this movie, but everybody that's seen this movie has had nothing but positive things to say about it. So like that could be enough to propel it. Maybe some under the radar nominations, but it could get in there.
I'm hoping that with the year Kelvin Harrison has been having with Loose and Waves, I'm hoping that he would be like a major awards contender going forward.
I would love to see that. I just watched Loose this past week, and
we didn't talk about it. What'd you think about it?
I really liked Loose. It's really good. Yes. I don't think it 100% sticks like the last 5 minutes.
You don't? I did.
No, but everything leading up to that is astounding. And
that last shot of him is incredible.
It's really good. His performance there is like just as good, if not better, than his performance in Waves.
It's not a scary movie, but I was watching it through my fingers. I don't know. I didn't know what to expect.
It's very unpredictable, and in that sense, it works really well. And one more movie I wanted to talk about was Just Mercy. That was another one that we saw at Middleburg. This is another like. I don't know if crowd pleaser is the right word because it does cover some pretty dark material. But it's
uplifting in the West.
Exactly. Yeah. That was the exact word I was going to use, is uplifting. And I think Jamie Foxx actually has a good chance to get in. Michael B. Jordan is also great. Do you think this movie has a good chance?
I would say I wouldn't put it in a picture.
No.
I would say it has a good chance in the other categories.
Okay.
Such as you mentioned Jamie Foxx. People have been talking about Jamie Foxx for this movie all over Twitter and saying like this is like his best. Performance in a long ass time since like Ray.
Yeah.
So I would see him in supporting actor. I could see that definitely.
Okay, cool. That's all I got. Do you
Just Mercy essentially is a better version of Green Book without the controversy.
No, that's a fair comparison. It's a really good movie. It definitely got one of the better ovations at Middleburg. I think people really liked it. It is uplifting, like you said, and it works really well. And it's a little formulaic, and I think that's what sort of hurt it with the critics. But I don't think being formulaic is a problem. If it's well made, it's well made, and I think this is a spectacular movie.
Surprisingly, I'm looking at it on IMDb right now, and it has like really low scores on Metacritic and user ratings. So I don't know what that's about.
That's weird. Because I think it's a really great movie, and I believe you felt the same way.
So yeah, I mean. Going forward, we're going to be talking about Dark Waters, Ford vs. Ferrari, and Honey Boy.
Yeah, those are upcoming. I could see Honey Boy getting in some under the radar nominations as well. And we'll sort of, as Sam just alluded to, we'll be touching on a lot of these movies in the coming weeks. This list will obviously narrow down as we get closer to the awards. Right now we're talking about 15 to 20 movies, but that list is going to have to come down. And as we see sort of momentum change and swing in these different races, we'll be able to talk a little bit more specifically about those in the coming weeks.
Maybe we can think about doing a live reaction to the Oscar nominations when they come out.
I would love to do that. I would really love to do that. Do you have any other sort of like best picture, maybe things that we didn't mention, or anything else you want to contribute?
No, I think we touched on everything.
All right, cool.
Nothing comes to mind.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks, Sam, for sitting here and talking to me about movies for over an hour now. I was worried that we would go over an hour, but I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too.
Yeah, definitely, I did. Yeah.
This is just episode 1. This is the start of an exciting journey.
And if you're listening to this, I love you. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. Please continue to listen. In the coming weeks, like I said, we're going to talk about director, we're going to talk about actor, we're going to talk about actors, but we're also going to talk about other movies. We're going to continue to review big releases. Frozen 2 comes out this month. As Sam mentioned, Rise of Skywalker is not far away. And we're going to continue to talk about a lot of those and keep an eye on us for your sort of big news stories as well in the coming weeks. So thanks again for listening to us for episode 1. Join us for episode 2. We're going to be releasing on a weekly basis. And yeah, that's all I got. Sam, you got any closing remarks?
I think Raj said everything.
All right, cool. Do you want to give everybody sort of like your Twitter information in case they want to give you a follow and just keep
I usually, if you want to give me a follow on Instagram, I rate movies as I watch them on my Instagram story. So it's Sam Osorio, SAMOSORIO. You can follow me on Twitter. Twitter is not as streamlined to movies. But if you want to, it's Sam0So, and that's all I have.
All right, cool. And you can find me at Raj Saw94 everywhere. Again, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you guys next week.